Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Vic Stamps podcast. I'd like to thank all of you, the viewers, for joining me this week for what I consider an incredibly special guest on this week's episode. The guest that I'm going to introduce to you is a very dear friend of mine, incredibly talented, a real estate agent, a lecturer at the university, an incredibly talented social media and marketing personality. This is none other than Dionne Clifton. Dionne, welcome to this week's episode.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I could not think of a more important first inaugural guest on the podcast than you. So thank you for taking me up on the invitation.
Hey.
You're somebody who I really want to introduce my audience to because I consider you one of my closest and most prized friends.
Wow.
And I want others to see how incredibly talented and amazing you are.
Okay.
Now, I mentioned a lot of things in the intro. I mentioned real estate agent. That's one of the first things I want to delve into.
Okay.
But also you have a separate responsibility through the university as a lecturer.
Yeah.
Leading today's youth, which we'll touch on later. And you're really the glue that kind of holds our friend group together. So let's unpack all of this by introducing you. Can you tell us a bit about your background, where you're from,
Yeah.
And a little bit about what you do currently?
I am from Urbana, Illinois. I grew up here. I am locally
Champaign?
Urbana.
Okay.
I know it may not seem like there's a difference, but Wright Street.
Okay.
You know, one side and the other. I'm
So it's
from
Urbana.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm from Urbana, Illinois. I grew up here. My family is from here. And I am, like I like to say, locally grown. So I went to undergrad here. I went to the West Coast to go to grad school.
Wait, you went to the West Coast? Where'd you go?
USC.
Okay. Hold on. USC, was this on a rowing scholarship or was USC involved in a scandal, an admission scandal? Rowing?
Listen, first and foremost, I was not in, my people didn't have that kind of money. So
Okay,
we were
my
not
bad,
in that
my bad.
admission
I don't wanna
scandal.
lump
I
you
got
in.
in the good old fashioned way
So-
and I had to pay tuition.
Okay, so you went to USC. Okay, so fantastic. That's Southern California. So you were in LA, is that right?
I was in LA.
Okay, how did you like that experience?
I will say, like, LA took some adjusting. Like, when I first got there, the first couple of years, I really was not feeling it. And
Okay.
then after some time, like, understanding the culture and meeting people and, like, kind of finding my people there and, like, you know, my stores, my grocery stores, restaurants, I really ended up loving LA.
Wait, so what did you do at USC? What did you study there?
I was in Annenberg. I studied communication management.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right. Very good. So you're at USC. You're enjoying LA. You're working in what capacity there?
I was working in television production.
Okay.
Primarily in non-scripted television, or as most people would like to call it, reality TV.
Okay. So like the Real Housewives or like Selling Sunset or like those shows?
I did not work on any of those shows.
Okay.
However, yes, those are the types of shows that would be considered non-scripted.
Is that like sleazy TV? I mean, it's like drama TV. No, is that right?
You know, I mean, I think that is very subjective. It depends on what you like, but I do think that the American appetite for television tends to lean towards what we call sleazy TV.
Okay,
you know?
but you got out though, and so
I got out.
So you leave USC. You come back to Champaign, or
Yep. So
Okay.
I left California. I came back to Champaign. I had some life changes that really kind of made me have to make a decision about what I was going to do next. And then I did a major career shift, turnaround, switch, change at the age of 33. And I got into real estate. Around that same time, I went to Geese and got an MBA.
Oh, okay. So you got your MBA too.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Did you get your MBA to start your real estate agency or career? Or?
No, actually, so I feel like everything that I've always done has been in the context of academia. So like I've always tried to marry whatever I was doing professionally to something in academia. And so it just felt very natural to me. It made sense.
Okay.
And so it was a great opportunity. I really was interested in getting an MBA generally. Even when I was in LA, I was thinking about, doing that. So when I had the opportunity to do it here at Illinois, which, I really loved the campus, I went here for undergrad, it just made sense.
Okay. So, was this career shift kind of predicated on the sort of the takeoff of real estate shows on TV, selling Sunset of these shows? Is that why you decided to get into real estate? Because I think just the average person that's looking at these shows, it seems like anybody can just show up and sell a house.
Yeah. So I've been in real estate for 10 years. When I got into real estate, selling sunset was not a thing.
Okay.
And like when I got into real estate, I was one of the first agents in our area who would use Facebook to like, promote myself and like promote my listing. So obviously fast forward 10 years later, everybody's doing that. And I just mean in our area in Champaign County. Obviously people in other areas were doing it, which is why I probably had the mind to do it because, my sphere was outside of just this local area. But no. So
okay. So I guess when I'm looking at these TV shows, as I said before, it seems like the average person, could sell a house. I mean, what do you need to know to sell a house? I mean, I've never sold a house. I mean, if you were giving me advice, what would I need to know to be successful in your line of work? What do you need to do?
I think you need to have a willingness to learn because you have to bring some sort of value to the process, right? So, the position of being a real estate agent has evolved so much where, we were talking about how people can go on Zillow and Redfin and Realtor. They can get their own information. So it's not about just being like, hey, here's a listing you'll like. They already have seen the pictures. They've had virtual tours. It's really about bringing value to their experience. So one of the things that I have tried to do, or one of the things I think that I bring to the process is just knowledge, information, and also try and make it about the experience and not about necessarily just like providing information because people have so much access to information. That's just not a sustainable way to interact with them through the process.
Sure. So, I mean, do you think that Redfin, Zillow, and these other apps have made it easier to sell real estate or harder to sell real estate? I feel like those apps kind of there are too many choices. I mean, so how do you kind of guide a buyer through the process of buying a house?
So that's an interesting question that actually relates to my other career as a lecturer because I teach in my sales courses that, this isn't just a real estate thing. People have more access to information, even when it comes to buying like cameras or like cars. You have so much access to information online, through your friends, through your networks. People have more access than ever before. So it has really changed and evolved what the role of the salesperson is. It's not about just purely providing information. It's about offering an experience, getting to the root of what sorts of challenges or problems that they have and offering solutions to those problems.
I was driving down Neal Street here in Champaign the other day, and I saw you had this amazing billboard up, and you had 3 or 4 other individuals. So you've grown your agency beyond just you. Do you find it difficult to manage others who may not be as knowledgeable as you as they attempt to guide other buyers through the home buying process?
It is definitely difficult to manage other people. It is one of the most difficult things that I find about like trying to lead an organization is managing other people. And that's not, because of the people. It's just, it is one of the things that has stretched me more than anything else is learning how to be a good leader, learning how to, motivate people, get the outcomes that you desire from people. That is one of the most difficult things that I have ever done professionally. Because
one of the things I see with buyers is, and I've heard about this, is sort of the emotional buyer or the emotional seller. Somebody who contacts you, I'm assuming, and says, "Hey, I want to sell my house," but maybe the number that they have in mind is vastly different than the value of the house.
Right.
So how do you sort of counsel an emotional seller when it comes to selling their house? They've lived in for years.
Right, and people are emotionally attached to their homes. So like, I try and give them the advice that I can give them. This is what your house is. This is the range that I think your home will sell for based upon other homes that have sold in the area. I'm going to overwhelm you with information. Even though you have access to the information, I'm going to honestly present it to you as a professional that you've hired to do this job for you. With that being said, you will still run into people who have their own, ideas and strategies for how they want to sell their house. And that's fine. I will respect that. But I think that the best advice I can give to sellers is to listen to the person who you hire. You wouldn't go and have a surgery and like be like, "Oh no, don't put me under. I want to be up for this." Like, no, you like,
right.
Let them do what you're hiring them to do. It's like you're actually working against yourself when you try and micromanage the process.
So, and I hate to keep bringing up TV, but, selling, real estate shows are just so popular right now.
For sure.
So, I mean, do you ever have a scenario in which somebody calls you up and says, Dionne, I want to sell my house for $1 million. I want you to be the agent. I mean, the house is worth half of that. Do you take the listing? How does that work?
I take the listing.
Do you?
I'll take the listing.
Even though you think the number that they're asking for is not attainable?
Absolutely. I will take the listing.
But doesn't that then let the buyer down on the back end, though, if you don't sell the house for that amount?
I don't work for the buyer. I work for the seller.
Oh,
so like my job is to help the seller have the outcome that they want, which I would assume is to sell their home. Now, they may have expectations about the price for their home that don't necessarily match what my recommendations are, but eventually we're going to get there if their goal is to really sell their home.
Sure.
Right. And so I'll take the listing.
Okay.
I'll take the listing. Now, I have had to fire people before. I have had to fire clients before.
You've had to fire clients before?
Absolutely. It is the best piece of advice I give people who are just getting into the industry. When it's not working, be okay with washing your hands with someone and just saying, you're not for me and I'm not for you. Best of luck. Have a great life.
What happens when a friend asks you to sell their house? Have you been in that scenario?
Love it. That's the best.
Does it strengthen or can it fracture friendships depending on how the transaction goes?
Funny story. A friend of all of ours,
no names.
No names. I listed and sold their house. It was a really great experience.
Okay, give me the name.
It was a really great experience. But I think what people don't understand is that they're going through an emotional process, right? So it's emotional. Like, who knows what they have going on? They may have to relocate. They may have to sell a house that they inherited from somebody who means something to them. So, my job is to just remain as subjective as possible or objective as possible and not allow the subjectivity of what they're going through to impact me as the professional.
Okay. Well, it's an interesting point because what most viewers don't know, you're actually building your own house right now.
I am.
And I can't wait to see the finished product. I'm sure more to come on that on your social media outlets. But
what do you mean you can't wait to see the finished? Weren't you driving by the other day?
Well, I don't want to get into that. I'm not stalking you. This is live TV. Okay. We have to edit that out. But so you're building your own house right now.
Yeah.
How do you then take your own advice and say, okay, this is a reasonable addition to this house. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to get my return on investment. Mm-hmm. How do you balance sort of wants and desires with understanding that if you put in 3 pools, nobody's going to pay for that, and so you may lose money on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, what I'm doing is I'm building a house that I want to live in. I'm building the house that I want to enjoy. Now, I don't have an unlimited budget, but with the budget that I have, I am building a house that I've always wanted to live in, And so I think a lot of times what I see people do is they will not upgrade their house until they're about to sell it. They've been wanting to paint, the house, but they never get around to it till it's time to sell it. They need to replace the flooring. They don't do that until it's time to sell it. And then they do all these upgrades for someone else who is going to enjoy and appreciate. I want to enjoy my home. And so that's kind of the space that I'm coming from. I understand there's some people who go into home purchases, maybe even a build, and that's not the space that they're coming from. They're like, I want to be able to sell this house in 5 years. So you're moving from a different space than I'm moving from.
So I think about that actually a lot. So let me ask you this: as someone who's a homeowner, mm-hmm. would you recommend that a homeowner upgrade their house every 3 to 5 years? Do you recommend keeping up with current trends? I mean, how do you counsel somebody who says, okay, I'm going to be here for 10 years. Eventually, I want to sell the house, mm-hmm. but I understand that a 10-year-old house with no updates may not sell. I mean, what do you do?
So that's a great question. I was showing a house 2 days ago to a family that I adore. I've worked with them with multiple purchases. And we were looking at a house that worked really well for them on floor plan, but the amount of updates that the house need was not sustainable for basically what they felt like, not even financially, but just the time equity. They were like, we'd rather just find something that's more expensive, that's closer to done. And so what I said to them is the moral of this showing is do not wait until you're moving out to think about what your house needs, because it needs to be at least fairly marketable when you go to sell it. So okay. Do you need to knock walls out and renovate your kitchen? No, but you do need to do small things that, one, you're probably going to enjoy.
Okay.
And there's value in enjoying living where you live. And then also that's going to make it marketable and isn't going to have your house getting price reduction after price reduction after price reduction and hundreds of showings and people in and out, and it still hasn't sold because it's so dated and it requires so much, work and time and sweat equity to make it something that the buyers today that's within the like realm of the taste of buyers today.
Sure. Okay. So to that point, then, let's say I'm going to upgrade my house. Is it true? And I've heard that this before, that upgrading either the bathroom or the kitchen or maybe outdoor space are the three most important things.
Kitchen is number one.
Kitchen is number one.
Kitchen is number one for sure.
Okay. What about a pool? People talk about a pool, and depending on your climate, your environment, putting in a pool or not.
Pool has always been a neutral upgrade in our area. Now, if we're talking about Arizona, California, Florida, that's a different story. Everybody has a pool in those areas. In our area, pool is a neutral upgrade because you have plenty of people who feel like I'm only going to use it 3 months out of the year. It's an expense that I have to incur. Or I have, members of my family who present concerns for me having a pool in my home, right? So if it's pets, if it's children, if it's elderly people, whatever, like for whatever reason, it's more upkeep. So it's a neutral upgrade. There's some people who are gonna be like, that house has a pool, I want it. Now I am starting to see a shift post-COVID where people have started to spend more time in their homes and want to have more of a luxury experience at homes where homes with pools are selling very quickly.
Really?
Very quickly, yes.
Okay. Is that the same with outdoor space then? Is a pool considered outdoor space? My understanding is during the pandemic, people wanted a lot more sort of outdoor space as well. Is that true? Or?
I think during the pandemic, people wanted a lot more home space. They wanted home offices. They wanted basements where they could send them people and their families that they don't want to see all the time. And they wanted nice outdoor spaces where they could entertain or just be at home and feel like they were not at home outside.
Okay. So with in today's era, would you recommend buying a house that's already built, or would you recommend building your own house? There are some people I've heard, they kind of buy a house and they basically just do a gut renovation. I don't understand that. Why not just build your own house? Is it cheaper? Is one more financially better?
Some people want a certain location, right? And so like if you want to live in
I've heard that.
Mature
location,
lots of trees, that's central Champaign, you're going to have to do a gut job. Maybe you like mid-century homes and you don't want, to live in a new construction neighborhood. So that may be the option for you. Now, I think that what you do versus, gutting versus a new construction is really dependent on who you are, what your goals are, and what makes sense for you.
What are the most popular sort of home styles that are selling right now? Is it contemporary? Is it mid-century modern, or whatever they say? What type?
Mid-century is hands down, like in Champaign-Urbana, mid-century homes, fairly updated, not even like super updated. Like people love it actually when you have a preserved mid-century, meaning something that maybe you've done some updates to it, but they're, within the spirit of the era. People love mid-century. I feel like that is always going to be something that's hot in this area.
Why is that though? I guess in my mind, I would think that you would want to buy a modern home because when you go to sell it in 20 years, it'll be less dated than a mid-century home. Why
mid-century is art.
Okay.
Right. So we're talking about art,
okay.
People who appreciate architecture.
Sure.
So that's kind of what the value is I think you're getting. But I mean, you have plenty of people who want a new construction, right? Now, the price of construction has kind of pushed a lot of people out of that market. So one thing that I will say is it's updated, right? So people want updated homes. I showed some homes yesterday. We looked at one house that was not updated. We looked at one house that was really updated and one house that was semi-updated. They were willing to make a lot of compromises for the house that was really updated. So that's why I really try and encourage my clients who bought with me, hey, I know you love this house. The kitchen isn't bad, but you're going to need to update this house if you're going to live here for 10 years because the next person is going to have those expectations. If it's dated now, it's going to be really dated in 10 years.
So you're just like a wealth of information about real estate. But one of the things that, I wanted to touch upon is that to me, you're kind of like a unicorn, so to speak. I mean, you're a female real estate agent, African-American female real estate agent, in a predominantly male-dominated field. How has that been for you, sort of trying to not only compete in this field, but be wildly successful like you have been? Has that been challenging? I mean, have you been met with sort of resistance from people who say, who is this person? I mean, who is this young real estate agent that's trying to sort of cut into our market?
Young is a push, however. So real estate has always been very, there's always been a lot of women in real estate. There's not a lot of women in leadership in real estate. So, I don't know. Like, I really try to not give too much attention to being a Black woman in real estate.
Really?
I mean that in a very specific way. Like, I try not to pay attention to the people who are trying to make that a difficult situation for me, because it's depressing, right? Like, I got to go to work and do my job every day. If I pay attention to every single person who has a problem with me doing my job because I'm a woman or because I'm Black, like, I wouldn't be able to get through my day. So I say it's difficult? Yes. Is it different? Yes. Is it harder? Yes. However, I'm still able to thrive in this industry. So I always tell women who want to get into the industry, a lot of Black women will reach out to me, hey, I'm thinking about getting into real estate. And I try and encourage them. Like, I don't want to tell them it's harder, like, you're going to have to deal with a lot of people who don't think you can do this. I tell them, like, get into it. You can do this, So
one of the things I think that sets you apart, though, is your social media prowess. I think unlike a lot of the other agents that I've seen in the area, your ability to kind of market through social media platforms is just like unlike any other.
Wow.
Do you think that's helped you, though, be as successful as you are?
Well, I have under 2,000 followers on Instagram. So it's
what's a good number to have followers on Instagram?
I think to be considered like a mini influencer or micro influencer, you need to have at least 5,000 followers. Okay.
Is that like the Haktua girl, like on Instagram?
I think she probably has more than that.
Okay. So do you primarily use those platforms then as your avenue to kind of market?
Yeah. I have traditionally used social media to market in our community. It's worked well for me because we live in a smaller community. And so, one person sharing a post that I have gives me a lot of reach. And if 2 people sharing gives me a whole lot of reach. I have posts that have like 109 shares, 284 shares. And that's just because the community has always supported me. So I've been able to really leverage social media to promote my listings, to promote myself, to like remind people, hey, don't forget about me when you're thinking about real estate. And, tell my story via my social media, use that as a vehicle to talk about the things I'm interested in, the things that I love. One of my brand attributes is aspiration. I think real estate is an aspirational experience. So I try to, help people understand that through telling my personal story and let them know who I am and letting them into my life. Because I think that tells my business story too.
One of the things that I'm personally interested in is not just sort of the buying, selling aspect of real estate, but it's actually using real estate as an avenue for financial income.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, I think, got into that maybe in the early 2000s before the housing bust. But is real estate still a viable option as sort of income pathway to rent out or lease out properties? Do you have any experience with that?
Absolutely. I own some investment properties, some rentals. I would say for the past, So is this like flipping houses, you mean, or? I have never done a flip. I get too attached to properties, so I do the flip and hold.
Okay.
So I'm like one of the last houses I did, I was like, oh, I'm gonna flip this, I'm gonna sell it next summer. Flipped it, and I was like, I can't sell this house. Like, I'm attached to it now. But we'll see. Like, I think as time goes on, a lot of my investment mentors are like, yeah, you'll get over that real quick. Let those 5-year refinances come up. You're going to be like, sell it. So we'll see. But
I heard some pretty crazy stories during the pandemic in which people were renting out properties, but the renters didn't pay rent, or I guess the term is squatters.
Yeah.
Did you experience that?
No.
Okay. So okay. Short answer then.
Right.
But
no.
what does an owner do if an agent, if a client doesn't pay rent? I mean, can you kick them out? Are there rules against that?
There are rules against it.
Really?
First and foremost, like, one of the things that I tell all of my clients is, Live Real Estate Group, which is the brokerage that I own, we also have a property management division called CU Property Management. We do property management. However, even if it's not us, hire a reputable and professional property manager if this is not something you're going to do as your full-time job. Because while these things can happen, you can still have a squatter. If you have a property manager, you'll still probably have some evictions. it is going to be a much smoother and easier process for you to get through. I've heard of people who are self-managing who had squatters living in their house for 18 months.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And during the pandemic, unfortunately, that was like very common because there was a moratorium on eviction. So you could not legally evict anyone.
Wow.
And so there are people who are like, months and months and months and months behind on their mortgage because they had squatters who would not pay their rent or move out. So yeah.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, as we sort of near the midway point of this segment, I have a few sort of things that I want to touch on. And one is this segment that I call Real Estate Would You Rather.
Okay.
So in this segment, we're going to sort of hit you with a couple of sort of hot points, and I'd like to sort of get your intake on these scenarios. All right. So the first scenario is the following: would you rather buy or sell a beautiful but haunted mansion, or a rundown house in a prime location?
Beautiful but haunted mansion, hands down.
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay, so unsolved mysteries, ghosts, and all that stuff.
Absolutely,
you think that you'd be able to sell that?
And I would play up
no
on
chance
it.
I'm
Like
buying.
when you come in for the showing, there's going to be unsolved mysteries. There's going to be like, I'm going to do a spooky open house. We're going to open it the weekend of Halloween. Like, come on.
And
like,
you think you could? Okay, all right, okay.
Because people are into that. There are some people who are into that.
I don't know those people. All right, next up. Would you rather work with a buyer with an unlimited budget, but extremely picky taste, or a buyer with a tight budget who knows exactly what they want?
Both. I mean, I'm doing that right now.
Okay, so why turn one or the other down?
Like my roster now. Like,
all right,
yeah.
So all comers. Okay, all right, fair enough. All right, next up, here we go. Would you rather have a property with an amazing interior but unattractive exterior, or a property with a stunning exterior but mediocre interior?
Stunning interior, terrible exterior.
Really? Why isn't there this thing called curb appeal? So
exterior is going to traditionally be far easier, more straightforward, and cheaper to upgrade than interior.
Really?
Absolutely.
But how do you get the buyer in? If I'm driving down the street and I see a dilapidated house, I don't even know what the inside looks like.
Yeah, but we already talked about, you already got Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com.
Okay.
You're going to see all the interior pictures.
Fair enough. So this brings me to my next point then. Do you think it's harder or easier to sell a house that's staged or unstaged? Because for me as a buyer, if there's no furniture in there, I can't see the vision. Yeah. I mean, it all has to be there.
I think it's going to depend on the property, right? And so it also depends on the agent. So I feel like one of the things I bring to the table is I'm very good at helping people like strategize on what you can do with a space. I'm like, oh, you could put a couch here. We could bust this wall open. Wouldn't it be great with new countertops? So if I can help you like kind of run your imagination through the property and like offer some creative solutions, I think that is easy. With that being said, like staging a home I think is great, but sometimes, I have some homes that I'm like, we need to get all this furniture out of here so I can sell this house because the furniture is what's making people feel like this is not my house.
I see.
They feel, oh, this furniture is too heavy. I hate this furniture. So like it really just depends. I think if it's well staged, yes, it can be much easier.
Okay.
But I think staging is like one of those things you really have to do kind of perfectly for it to be beneficial.
Okay. All right, cool. All right. Next up, would you rather have a client who insists on attending every open house with you there and a potential buyer, or a client who only wants to see properties through virtual tours?
Definitely the client who wants to go to every single open house. I have done so many virtual tours. During the pandemic, I became an expert. I'm probably in the country top 25.
Really? Virtual tours? This must be a new thing then.
Well, I mean, during the pandemic, there were a lot of people, because remember, like, there were like, you couldn't go into homes at one point. Like,
right.
On,
Yeah, right.
Or it was like, like people would have COVID and they were like, we still need to see this house because we need to move, you know?
Okay.
So I was doing virtual tours every single day. I worked with clients who were like, we can't get out there because, you know, travel is crazy. We can't get on an airplane. And so...
And you preferred that?
No, I don't like it.
Oh, okay.
I don't like doing virtual... It's not that I don't like doing virtual tours. I don't like selling a home to someone who's never been in it.
I see.
Because the expectation never meets reality.
I see. Have you ever been in a situation in which the seller of the house is just there kind of following you around with your client?
Absolutely.
How does that work? Is that uncomfortable?
It's a very uncomfortable situation. It's like if you're selling a home, I don't care if you're doing it yourself, if it's a FSBO, if you have an agent, get out the house. Allow the people an opportunity to see it. Like, it feels very creepy. It feels very intrusive. Like,
Are those people that are just emotionally attached to the house?
Emotionally attached, and again, think that they have like, you know, like some insight on the home that would not be conveyed without them being there.
Is that hard to sort of work with an emotional buyer, somebody who just feels like my home is worth, you know, twice what it is, and sort of counseling them that, hey, look, you haven't done X, Y, and Z. Maybe the home is not worth that.
You know what will humble a seller more than anything?
What's that?
The market.
Okay.
Right? So like, yeah, you can think your house is worth X. And if the market says your house is worth 50% of X, you'll see that, you know?
Is it true that like as a buyer, you never want to buy the most expensive house in a neighborhood? Is that true?
I mean, I think it depends on who you are. Again, some people want to live in the biggest, nicest house in their neighborhood. That is a value that they have. Some people want to live in the smallest, least expensive house in the neighborhood. Right?
Okay.
So like, I think that really depends on your personal values and like what your goals are for your home ownership.
Interesting.
journey.
All right. Last one.
Okay.
Would you rather sell a house to a celebrity and deal with all the publicity that comes with it, positive
Say
or
less. That's it.
So, but what if you don't sell the house though? I've seen plenty of instances on shows in which an agent gets fired because they didn't sell a listing. They promised that they would sell at a certain price point and were unable to do that. Don't you feel like that can cut both ways?
You know what the biggest difference between a winner and a loser is?
No, what's that?
Risk. You got to take the risk. I'm going to do it. I'm going to see what happens.
Risk it for the biscuit, as they say.
Yes, absolutely.
Incredible. Yeah. But before we close, I guess what is one piece of advice that you as an agent can give to a buyer, and what's one piece of advice that you could give to a seller as they sort of navigate this relationship?
Okay.
Buyer first, though.
Okay,
buyer first.
For a buyer, you have to be realistic. There's no such thing as a perfect house. So like trying to search for the perfect house is not going to be it. You know, like, girl, you settle for that man, you can settle for this house.
That's another episode.
Like, please simmer down. Like, no, seriously though. Like, you know, I always try and when I do my buyer consults, I'm like, there's no such thing as a perfect house, even new construction. You know, in the inspection period, you're going to find things about the house that you're like, wow, okay, I wasn't expecting this. There's no such thing as a perfect house. We are willing to happily settle with people who meet 7 out of the 10 of our boxes. A home that meets 7 out of the 10 of your boxes is an excellent home. And you always have the opportunity to live in the home, enjoy it, sell it, and then buy another home. So that's my advice. Do not expect perfection from your home.
What about for a seller? What piece of advice would you give that individual?
Try to let go of the emotion and the memories that you have in the house when you're selling the house. If you really, truly want to sell your house, you have to let go of the emotional connection that you have to the house, and try and make it a pleasurable experience. Think about, you know, passing a gift on to someone else. And I think that is going to make it a lot better of an experience for you versus thinking about, you know, all of the years and tears that you put into this house and how, you know, someone else isn't appreciating what you did. Like really letting go and like trying to enjoy the experience.
I think for me, if I was giving a piece of advice, I would just tell anyone just to contact you directly for all the specifics.
That's obvious.
Before we close, can you tell the viewers at home how they can connect with you or get in contact with you and your agency?
Yeah, so Live Real Estate Group, we are located in Champaign, Illinois on Neal Street. You can also call me on my cell phone and you can Google me. It's very easy to find us, our information. You can catch me on social media. My handles are Dionne Clifton for literally everything from what used to be Twitter, which I believe is called X now, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all of the goodies, even TikTok. I'm even on TikTok. You can find me, Dionne Clifton.
Fantastic. Well, that's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Vic Stamps podcast. I could not have been more delighted to have you, Dionne, as my first inaugural guest on the podcast. It's been amazing having you and teaching our viewers and myself a little bit more than I thought I knew about real estate. So until the next episode, we thank you for joining, and God bless. Peace.